Knowledge Seekers Workshop here on Thursday, August 12th, 2021. Well, Mr. Kesh, how would you like to proceed in this second part of the workshop?
Are there any more questions?
Well, we do have a hand up here from Farzam. Farzam, can you, would you like to open your microphone and go ahead? I'm asking to unmute, but I'm not sure if he's able to do that. Farzam, if you can open your microphone and if you'd like to go ahead. Well, perhaps it was an accidental hand up.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm looking at YouTube here. Dan would like to understand that the plasma water produced with the GANs with good intentions, is it that the information will last forever? Will last you forever?
What does it mean?
I think he's asking when you create the GANs water, the plasma water, will that information last forever? Does it have a shelf life, essentially, I think is what he's asking.
When you make ganses, they have a shelf life as they give the energy to the other plasmas, yes. But as an energy lifetime or process.
So would you say the GANs itself would last forever, but the dilution of it would...
it will dilute into different strengths and what other needs to take from it. This is what we say in most of the teaching. You cannot steal, but what's available freely is there for you to use. So when you make a GANs of magnesium, full bottle, and then after a few weeks you see you got half of the bottle GANs, that energy of the GANSes has been distributed to what is needed in the room where you are. If you produce very, what I call soft, not density GANSes, and you put in the bottles, you will see them, they reduce and they deplete. Partially is to do the inertial pull in gravity of their own mass or their own field, and partially is that they're feeding the environment. There are certain GANSes when you put in, as I said, in the houses with huge emotional problem, you'll see they deplete, but the people change. What kind of aggression will change? What do we feed? The spread of the strength of the field is part of the what you call new space cities. By dispersing fields of a given strength from the GANSes, we can change even the mood of the man. If you have a what we call, especially, this is part of the work we have tested in sporadic ways years ago. Let's say if you have a riot in the city, or people are there to create the condition. With a new technology, you can change them. Doesn't mean what I said to a security guy, we change it from demonstration to protest, if you understand what it means. Before you have a violent act, in a way, if you have a drone that can spray or create the fields of a given strength, you find out people still talk what they want, but they don't move into the aggression part. It's not a mind control, it's not the thing, is satisfying the emotion. We're not creating herd of lambs. You still have your opinion, we don't change your mind. It's just we change the aggression behavior as part of the emotion. You don't talk, you don't touch the line of thinking. You change your emotion from being aggressive. These are the parts of the development of the technology, especially in what we call institutions, in like prisons, like hospitals. It costs a lot to keep a criminal locked up. It costs very little to change what we call the emotion. And those technologies we have. I developed this years ago, but now I see it, as I said, time for a lot of things to be released. Any other question?
Okay, let me see here. Sebastian from Slovenia has a question. Says water has substances, frequencies, and protocols present in the water network. So the water is not in a GAN state. How to remove everything with GANs except with its own light? Move everything with you. I think what he's saying is how to remove all the substances, frequencies, and stuff that's present in the water, the information in the water.
Ganses.
To make it pure, I guess.
Ganses.
Ganses is the answer.
Ganses is the answer. But you gotta know which gans you use.
You've addressed this somewhat in the Fukushima teachings.
Yes, is how we do it. It'll be very interesting because we have seen it in agriculture in China. I would love to have access to what I call sea life, which has mutated due to Fukushima. And put them in a tank with the specific gases and see if we can reverse the evolution or damages of the Fukushima, as we call it. But there's another point to look at, as we just said about the fire. Would this accident lead to creation and mutation of the sea life or wildlife that in the future will lead to a much more higher intelligence life on this planet? Are we, if we interfere to reverse the mutation or what has been created, stopping a much more advanced life cycle, not necessarily like man, but fish cycle to be created? Not everything is negative. Maybe man's life started from one of these deviations, one of these accidents. Maybe a block of carbon fell in the water and changed the acidity, and in that pond started the cycle that could life exist.
For example, there's certain pine trees that the pine cones don't actually grow into pine trees until the forest burns. And when the forest burns, the temperature goes up enough where the pine cones are in the ground that it melts the resins that hold the seed together in the pine cone and allows the pine cone seeds to disperse. And then the pine comes up to replace the previous forest that was a different variety and wasn't really suited for that fire environment. And the pine will take over. So that's a kind of an example of a different life form is ready to go basically for that environment.
We got to accept evolution, and maybe because of it, a new what they call advancement in the cycle of life on this planet. This is part of the progress, and we cannot stop any of these processes. But some accidents can lead to creation of new kind of life. We don't know. If you are here in a million years and trace it back, says, oh, there was a nuclear explosion somewhere, and that was the point when we can see the start of mutation. The best example of this comes from Lisa and Jim in Australia. In some of their communication months ago, as they have an aqua farm growing their vegetables, they found some fishes which were in the main tank, which they didn't think would be there, and they grown so much and they changed so much. But by literally digesting the gases in the bottles, the energy from them, and growing differently. And we all get affected one way or another by changes. We have no say in it. Are there any other questions? You wanted to show something. Right.
Oh, yes.
As a tribute to someone.
Yeah, let me bring up the Wikipedia entry here and I'll have a look at that. Give me a second.
There are people who want, while you're busy with that, who want to come to the new exhibition center in Linz. Please go through the same process as before. Register, and you'll be given when you want to come and everything else, that we organize it for it to be there. The new exhibition is in a way isolated, that you have to access it, and please make the same booking as before, and we'll see how the time can be given for your visit. Go ahead. I'll go silent.
Okay, well, before the workshop, I had mentioned to Mr. Kesh that in the Kesh Plasma Reactor Group, I had brought up this idea, this tribute actually to a person that's, well, his name is Paul Hellyer, as you can see in the title here. And he just passed away a few days ago on August 8th. And he was 98 years old when he died. And he was very active even up till time of his death. And he was, as they say here, a Canadian engineer, politician, writer, and commentator. And they get into his political life and so on. He was actually the defense minister for Canada, the Minister of Defense for Canada for 4 years in the mid-1960s during the Cold War times and so on. And it goes on to give a description. He was an engineer, took aeronautical engineering and had his private pilot's license and so on. And he was very active in politics and was kind of outspoken in many ways. And it gets into his political thing. But the interesting thing about Paul Hellyer is, well, you kind of get the idea what he's like when, I'll read this part here. On June 3rd, 1967, Hellyer, by then he would have, I think he was still the Minister of Defense in June. I think he retired from that or passed on the helm in November or something in 67. Hellyer flew in by helicopter to officially inaugurate an unidentified flying object landing pad in St. Paul, Alberta. The town had built it as its Canadian Centennial Celebration Project and as a symbol of keeping a symbol of keeping space free from human warfare. The sign beside the pad reads, "The area under the world's first UFO landing pad was designated international by the town of St. Paul as a symbol of our faith that mankind will maintain the outer universe free from national wars and strife, that future travel in space will be safe for all intergalactic beings. All visitors from Earth or otherwise are welcome to this territory and to the town of St. Paul." It goes on that in early September 2005, Hellyer made headlines by publicly announcing that he believed in the existence of UFOs. On September 25th, 2005, he was an invited speaker at an exopolitics conference in Toronto, where he told the audience that he had seen a UFO one night with his late wife and some friends. He said that although he had discounted the experience at the time, he had kept an open mind to it. He said that he started taking the issue much more seriously after watching ABC's UFO special in February 2005. And it goes on, and where the Ottawa in 2007, the Ottawa Citizen paper reported that Hellyer is demanding that world governments disclose alien technology that could be used to solve the problem of climate change. He says, "I would like to see what alien technology there could be that could eliminate the burning of fossil fuels within a generation. That could be a way to save our planet. We need to persuade governments to come clean on what they know. Some of us suspect they know quite a lot, and it might be enough to save our planet if applied quickly enough." And in an interview with Russia Today in 2014, Hellyer said that at least 4 species of aliens have been visiting Earth for thousands of years, with most of them coming from other star systems, although there are some living on Venus, Mars, and Saturn's moon. According to him, they don't think we are good stewards of our planet. So that's a little bit about him, and he's written over a dozen books. Some of them very critical of the banking systems and politics and so on. And he's got one of his books called Light at the End of the Tunnel, Survival Plan for the Human Species, and so on. So to me, he's kind of one of my heroes, because I remember in 1967 when he opened up that UFO landing pad, and I thought how kind of strange that was at the time, but it was kind of cool. The Minister of Defense actually engaging in that, which is a strange concept. And it turns out in 2005 and 6, when he started going public about this and claiming that UFOs exist, he was the highest ranking person in the world to come forward with that claim and actually, not be senile when they're doing it, or coming from a. He was very educated and very straightforward, honest, and I think he's one of the greatest sort of unknown Canadians, because the news media would barely touch him. I don't even think they mentioned him when he passed away. And yet he's been extremely active. He actually started a new political party in Canada and so on, and almost became prime minister at one time. So what I did is I actually communicated with Paul Hellyer a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, and I just wanted to reach out to him and see if he could make some sort of connection with the plasma technology and so on. So I'd like to, and we had a few correspondences back and forth at that time, but I'd like to read the letter that I wrote, because he was 95 or 6 at that time. And, I figured if one of us passed away, I didn't know if he would or I would first. He's pretty tough. And I thought I'd better reach out to him and just say what was in my heart. So this is the way the letter went. To Paul Hellyer, I want to express my gratitude for your presence and for your efforts over the years. Your work has helped to lay the groundwork for the amazing changes which are now occurring on planet Earth. People are warming up to communications with other world entities and are interested to travel within our solar system and beyond. We begin to recognize that chaos and injustice on this planet needs to be addressed before we venture into deep space. Thank you for attempting to remedy the ills of the earth and for awakening those who need to hear the message of the universal community. You have been an inspiration for me and many others to carry on with the message that we are not alone in the universe and that we are preparing to go to space. Some with a spaceship and some without. I look forward to 2019 as a year of greatest change for humanity as we come together to leap forward. Cheers, Rick. And he wrote back to me, thank you very much for yours of December 28th. Your words are appreciated. Officially resigned from the email circuit December 31st, 2018 to save the 2 or 3 hours for other projects. Most important of these is a series of 5-minute YouTubes covering the 10 or 12 most important issues facing humankind at the moment. Warmest best wishes, Paul. So here he was, 96 years old, still active, making YouTube videos, informing the public, and basically being a bit of a pain in the butt to the powers that be. But I so much appreciate Paul Hellyer and his work, and I'm just happy to be able to acknowledge that he existed, and I thought he was a pretty cool guy. So that's my tribute to Paul Hellyer. And there's word out in the community that he's helping us on the other side now, even much more powerfully than he could from this side. So I think we have an ally on the other side that'll help our changes on this planet. Okay, thanks. I think that's about it.
Thank you very much, Rick. Any other question?
Okay, what do we have here? Well, I'm not sure about this. We'll try this one from Philip in YouTube. It says, Mr. Keshe, Mr. Keshe said, if you break through the light, so if you see the light of your soul, do you just stay there? And what's happening with your body when you're there witnessing it? I don't know if that question quite made sense, Mr. Keshe. Should I try it again?
Can you repeat that?
Philip says it's a little broken, but Mr. Keshe said, if you break through the light, so break through the light. So if you see the light of your soul, I think break through the light so that you see the light of your soul. Do you just stay there? And what's happening with your body when you're there witnessing this light of the soul?
Not much and a lot. In so many ways, we become aware of transition. We become in both dimensions when the soul expands and when the soul retracts. In a way, when the physicality takes over. The physicality from its sense of vision through the brain sees the transition, not with the eye of the man. Because the eye transfers the fields or whatever, and then we see it as visual dimension. When you go through the transition of the soul, is the part of the brain which responsible for what we call transition of light or information to knowledge of, okay, this what I see is a book or whatever, we call it a knowledge, acknowledging that what is being seen. In the transition of the soul of the man works with that part, not with the physical vision as we see it. So we become aware of it in both dimensions. When the soul expands and when the soul retracts to become what I call encaged in the other. In so many ways, it's, as I always say, it's like a sheepskin. You turn it inside out. What is out goes in, what is in goes out. And when the time is right, you do use it the other way. The vision of the expansion of the soul does not come through the eye of the man. It comes through the senses of the brain, which translates the information to what you call the transition. And in so many ways, dimension of physicality in its operation, when cannot exist, will merge inside the energies of the soul. In a way, it takes protection from what he has. And this is one of the biggest problems with the present man. As we are so physical, we want to be always in charge, in control. We don't allow the soul to show its beauty. It's a way of understanding of the work. And this is what we call the collaboration between the soul of the man and the soul of physicality. And this is part of the teachings, that how for man to understand, to trust, to let the soul to expand, that he can protect it. It's just something we are afraid of till we go in it, and there is no fear because we become familiar with it. And this is the part which is man, and with the teachings we try to bring into you to understand. And when this happens, do not look for a visual manifestation of a light or dark or whatever we hear people talk, but understand the transition over what we call another dimension of the sensation we are not familiar with at the moment, but we are aware of it and we live through it. This is what I said, there are many senses that man is not, we cannot explain, and in time will be added. And what I call the sense of vision, not the way you call it as vision, but the sense of vision in the plasma condition, the expansion of the soul of the man, is very, very different than what we see with the eye, even though it's the same parameters. And this is part of what human race has to learn, that when such a thing happens, the soul is in charge. When such a thing happens, the physicality is in charge. And how do I work within each one? We talked about the disasters. If you suddenly find yourself surrounded in a forest with a fire, and in a physical dimension you burn, and the soul is free. But if you have the knowledge, the capability to transform and cocoon the physicality within the fields of the soul, as a field extension, you can move it anywhere and pop out on the other side of the forest when the fire is not and it's clear, and then go to the transmutation. This is not something abnormal. Man and many of our ancestors who have been in touch with the civilization beyond this planet have seen it many times. It's now its turn for man to learn the process. And it's done through emotion, nothing else. And this is what we're trying to teach. When you look at the structure of the man in his brain, it's very simple. We all have it, but we have never used it. When you have the brain and you have the soul in the center, as long as all the energies of the soul, or majority of it, can be absorbed by the brain, you control, you dampen it, you blanket it. What about the point when you learn to do the other way? To feed from the physicality into the soul. That the soul expands, and the brain of the man and the physicality is still intact, but the soul protects, expands its dimension. We do this when we are asleep. But in our sleep, we have learned a very clever way. We allow certain channels for our soul to open dimension of communication with outside or expand beyond. It's, if you look at a magnet, you have fields coming in and going out. In structure of our brain, we have manipulated, and then over time that we allow only these fields to go out. We block the others to keep the physicality and lock the soul in. And this is the process that we have to learn, and it's a process of individuality and collective work of the fields of the body of the man, be it the soul or the soul of physicality. And this is what we call the spirit and the soul, and how we separate them, and how we allow one to transmute within the strength, within one into the other dimension and come back. Where we see a dimension of physicality we want to manifest ourselves, we reduce, and now we become physical. And when we choose, in another point, we create the dimension of the soul as we like, even to the extent of clearing out most of the functionality of the brain. And that we, in so many ways, we take over. We choose. But when you do this, when you take to this position, then you have to supply enough that the physicality can keep on existing. That in a way, not the physical normal function of the brain, but the emotional function of the brain still exists, that you're aware of what's happening outside, but if need be, you can become physical dimension to see the outside. This is part of what we'll show with enhancement units, part of what we'll show with new technologies and sciences which will come. We show this transition because it's important for us to understand, and once this is shown, the dogma of the religions will finish. Because is the priest talking to the soul of the creator, or is the priest talking to physicality of the man? And these are the things which will come with education and understanding. And to us at this moment is abnormal, but when you understand, you work in two different dimensions, you become very normal. To our new or next generation, some of us who become enlightened with the knowledge and the process of working with it. Just because the knowledge you don't understand does not mean it doesn't exist. And knowledge seekers have become very open-minded and understanding the physical transition between energy and matter. You understand and you can do. But when you want the soul to be in operation, the energies of it, not the soul itself, or when do you want the energies of the physicality to be. But would we have eyes on the surface of another planet? Do we need it? Or the senses of our emotion of our brain is good enough, like a sonar, to see everything with what I call the emotion of the vision of the soul of man. And very soon, majority of you knowledge seekers will reach that point. You are in the process of producing ganses without you knowing, that will reach to the point that it creates the emotion of what I call trust between the soul of the man and the soul of physicality. And then we will see. I explained this to someone some times ago, maybe in different shape or forms we can understand it. It's related to point of the trust of letting. Most of us have what we call a barrier. We don't let nobody passes that barrier. Could be 1 centimeter, could be 5 centimeters. And some of us are, we only allow certain people to shake hands with us, certain people to cuddle us. But we don't go beyond that point of cuddle, and we feel safe with it. And some of us, a certain point with the structure of a body of us, we allow what I call having a closer relationship. We decide on a matter of trust how much we allow who to be. On the street, somebody knocks you, say sorry, because you intrude into their what they didn't want to share. And you can knock to someone on the same street, but it's a friend, and it turns out, oh, it's you, and you get a cuddle and kiss for it. And the same one, we knock on the street, shoulder by accident, and you end up being our lover. We decide the process of accessibility and process of emotion acceptance. And this is what we have to do between our soul and the soul of physicality. The trust. At the moment, human beings are the ones who are knocking on the street and sorry, I'm on my own, you're not allowed in. We're trying to create that position gradually, that when you knock somebody on the shoulder by accident, walking, then you find out it's a friend. You cuddle, you kiss. You're there for me as much as I'm there. And then we have to move to a position that we become lovers. That the other become more important than me. In a way, as I said, in the forest position with the fire, I love the physicality of what I've created, that I stand out to protect it. And when the soul is in a position of not wanting to be, I take the position of what I call physicality. Man at the moment is in that knocking shoulder on the body on the street, and still having the fear of trusting to be a friend. And this is where we are in this cycle of man. And this is what, with education, we're trying to bring you to understand. What you have ignored is a friend you need, if you're going to go and find the love of Creator to become a lover. And this is where the knowledge of the Keshe Foundation sits. Allowing the man in the dimension of physicality to meet his Creator through the dimension of his emotion, or what we call, without tangibility and physicality, but in the dimension of the fields of the emotion. And then, when the man falls in love with his Creator through the dimension of his soul, that man has the freedom of to be what he wants to be at any point. physical dimension or dimension of field of energy, as we call the solar. And this is a process we all have to learn if we would like to go through that transition. We go to churches, we go to mosques and pray to help or see the Creator. But it's us who has engaged the soul, who has the capability to be in touch with the Creator. We have put it in prison and we would like to be able to dance with it, but we're standing outside the prison and we are the prison keeper. To enjoy, to be able to enjoy your prisoner, you have to let him out, to be there on the dance floor to dance with you. And this is where the fear of man is. And this is an emotional love, which comes from the interaction of the field of the two, that you're always afraid that if the soul takes over, the physicality dies, where it's actually in reverse. When the soul takes over, the physicality gets a chance to survive. And this lack of trust in one's existence is what the others use to abuse the man in the dimension of physicality. When we shall meet with the world leaders and the religious leaders, we will ask for the rope and the turbine. Does not matter whatever, because they'll be enlightened to the truth, not to our presence. And this is what you shall see in the coming time, when the conditions are made that the man becomes enlightened through his own knowledge and not by control of the others, be it the physicality of the man or be it on the banner of any religion. You shall see this very soon, sooner than you ever expected. As I said to a very religious guy very recently, very soon the churches and the mosques which are created to shackle the man to fear of Creator become the school where they teach the man how to become free. The same building, the same structure, the same man, but instead of frightening him from his existence, it would enlighten him to see his Creator through the right way, to build trust between the soul of the man and the soul of physicality. And then you will see the changes. Any other?
Thank you, Mr. Keshe. We have a question in the YouTube from apparently an Iranian person. I had to translate it in Google. What was the name there? Let me just get that. Ali from Iran or Iranian says, hello, Mr. Tavakoli. Well, it's a rough translation. When Iran comes to unveil the enhancement unit? So I guess he's asking, when will the enhancement unit be unveiled in Iran?
I'm trying to be very diplomatic and very political at the same time. It'll be sooner than you can imagine. And at this moment of time, the way we see it, will be shown in Iran National Defense University. as cornerstone of defending humanity and the nation. We expect it to be in Iran in the coming weeks. We have stood and supported the what we call correct outcome of what we see developing in Iran, and with it we support the nation with science and technology. We are in the early stages of this transition, and we will wait and see how the office of His Excellency President Rasaei of Iran take the next steps in science and technology, and all the signs are extremely good. We have 100% trust, and we pay our respect to the Iran Prime Minister and his position as an extremely knowledgeable man, as he has moved from the head of Iran National Defense University to become the Minister of the Nation, or in a foreign language, as the Prime Minister of Iran. We have a close collaboration with National Defense University, and we respect the offices of the new Iran president and the Prime Minister, we call National Minister. He is instrumental in the expansion of the Keshe Foundation technology the way you see it, and his wisdom has been part of the work of the Keshe Foundation expansion in Iran. That is why we sit very close, and him being the head of Iran National Defense University and now become the Prime Minister of Iran has opened a lot of channels for Keshe Foundation. He's monitored our work for past 2 years very closely, and he is an extremely knowledgeable man, an extremely respectable scientist. And we see how, as part of the Keshe Foundation work, we will develop our technologies within the university, National Defense University of Iran. As you remember, the Corona report was done in conjunction with the scientists at National Defense University, with the instruction and support of the new Iranian, what we call Prime Minister. So the government is fully aware of our work, and we are within the structure. And all our technologies, the way we did the Corona report, will come out of the National Defense University of Iran. And we have no problem with this in the next few weeks, once they get their approvals from parliaments and the support of our work goes, because they are fully aware of our work, and we have a lot to do. And we will show this in the coming weeks. We have no problem in developing further stages, especially in space transmutation, and what we're trying to keep with the university to show the first flight in June the 6th, 2022. It's part of the bigger picture which Keshe Foundation is involved, and we work with.
Okay, we've got a hand up, Mr. Keshe from Azar here.
You heard that song that says, "Here comes trouble."
Good afternoon, Mr. Keshe.
Good afternoon, Azar.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have a question, Mr. Keshe. If you remember, you said in the past that you have the ability to make man peaceful and take all of us to space. But the problem is, since all the information is in RNA, we still make the same mayhem in the space. Now, the question is, if the solar physicality is keep getting elevated, for example, say I keep getting elevated at the point my physical soul and soul matches each other, is that elevation of the physical soul that become to the point of highest point being transferred to the messenger, to the RNA and DNA instantaneously, or is it time lapse that is going to be taken in order to be imprinted in the RNA and DNA?
I'm going to answer you in a very, very different way because it needs to be answered that way. First of all, I hope you enjoyed your churro kebab in Tehran today. Secondly, what we forget is the cornerstone of the plasma technology and the teaching. And it is the word you use, elevation. In the world of creation, humbleness is the process of development of another soul. When you speak about the elevation of the soul, you speak about the elevation of the soul of the man, but you speak about humbleness of the soul of the physicality. And this is what man has not learned yet. You do not elevate the soul of the man as you consider. You make physicality so humble that it allows the soul of the man to show its beauty. Totally two different ways. And as long as you become thinking you're humble, but you're actually hoping to elevate the soul, you will not reach there. We take, in a way, we empty a jar to fill it up with something more. We humble the soul of physicality that allows the soul of the man to show itself. That's what we call elevation. And this is what many of knowledge seekers and mankind have not understood. You go, you've traveled from India to South America and everywhere looking for all these gurus and the rest of it. But one thing I'm sure you have not realized. Have you ever seen a man who can show his soul, be arrogant and talking, walking tall? The humbleness comes from the virtue and from the understanding of the being so humble that the soul shows its beauty. We don't elevate the soul. We always, if we go back to all the teachings of the Keshe Foundation, we teach unconditionally and we give unconditionally. We are detached. It comes from humbleness. Because you realize what you have is nothing compared to what is behind the knowledge which sits behind. And then when you share the beauty of the main knowledge, it manifests itself. And it's the same with the man. Don't look for elevation. Look for humbleness. Look what we call for the servitude. We still live the life of the man. But with it, with the thoughts and not the physical work of it, with understanding the operation of it, you allow, instead of the elevation or freedom of the soul to come at the point of death, to be at all times.
And Mr. Cash, what you're saying is instead of when you constantly think about elevation, actually nothing is happening. It's just like you have to be humble. But just like when you want to have a beautiful flower, you don't constantly think about the flower, but if you put a seed down and water it and take care of it and nurture it, the flower shows up. It means it has to do with our action more than thinking about elevation. Because thinking about elevation, nothing is going to happen, but my action actually justifies. The elevation happens naturally when you're humble, but when you think about elevation, nothing happens naturally.
You see, there are two different ways of action. One is a physical action, one is an emotional action. Not many men have found what you call elevation through the physical action. But many men have found elevation, as you call it, of the soul or freedom of the soul from the emotional action. And that's the difference. It gives you access to a different dimension. It gives you access to what you never want. You walk on the street and you think you're very generous and God will give you this and that, and you give money to a beggar or somebody you think he asks for money, he needs money to live. And you think you're very humble. You get nothing for it, more or less very little, except self-satisfaction. You walk a few meters away and you see a man in pain. And you wish I could carry your pain, that you don't suffer. And then you find a few steps further an elevation and a knowledge, a freedom. And you think, oh, because I paid the man, it gave me the pleasure of this elevation. But it was actually the man who you took the pain of. And this is where mankind goes very, very deep in understanding that he's still attached to physicality. Because physical terminology has an end, but emotional and soul has not. Even though in time, it'll come to its own cycle of dispersing its fields. Even our soul has a transition time, but it depends what it goes to and what it gives to be as part of its transition to the next step. Or you just become what I call fertilizer gathered, and then you disperse it to grow some others in the future. So you have to understand what it means. Building mosques and churches and giving charity has not brought no such a one single elevation to no soul. But if you, in the process of building a mosque or a church, you build it for the souls to be elevated, for a man who needs food, come to church or to the mosque, and you look after it by and given the comfort of home, then you receive that elevation, because you took a suffering from a man. And this is exactly what is the opposite happening today. You get a beggar to go to church, the priest kicks him out. This is not your place. This is my place to beg from the people and steal from. You cannot steal from a man who already robbed the other people from their soul and their pocket. And I've told you many times, go to Vatican and walk around the bridges. On the bridges, the walkway to the Vatican, where you walk into the square, and just on the border where the line of Vatican is, move back 50 steps and look to the left. You see a lot of homeless people sleeping on the window sills of the Vatican's car park hidden behind, bringing coaches and coaches of Japanese, Chinese, Filipinos and the rest to put money in the coffers of the Vatican. And these people are Christian and they sleep hungry and in boxes. Then you pay more to, in a way, become part of the criminal part, to steal from the physicality of the man. I've stood many times and I see hungry and homeless people literally around the richest church in the world. They do not feed them, they do not help them, and they sleep in winter and summer in boxes on the window sills and on the underground bridges around Vatican. You cannot rob from somebody who's already robbed everything. And this is where it comes. And you give something to a beggar, and you think you've done well and God will help you. That act itself has taken from you even being elevated. Then you understand more. Elevation of the soul does not come in the dimension of physicality. It comes through the dimension of emotion and thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Keshe.
Well, we're nearly half. Oh. Any other question? Or shall we call it a day?
Well, you pretty much wrap things up here. Let me see. We have one question I'd like to briefly address, perhaps from Bernie, who asked me to ask this about whether there's a relationship between Mr. Keshe's GANs and the Cup of Life and similarities to the alchemy of old, as well as the Baghdad battery. He says, in many senses, it seems that Mr. Keshe is reviving a lost, ancient, advanced plasma technology and science.
We have taught man many times, but he never listened. Now we're teaching again. You understand? It's just like going to a class and failing, you go back and you sit for the same class again, but the same teacher.
Alchemy 101, once again.
Once again. You haven't learned, you have to resit the exam. The knowledge we have taught many times, but the man has not been ready as today. Part of it was due to communication, part of it was to isolation, and part of it was through control. It's the first time man has the true mass communication that everybody can listen at the same time and be able to share knowledge in that way. And this is why Keshe Foundation has such a capability to reach. And we reach very deep very far. And we hear every day different events, and we realize how big is Keshe Foundation, how far we reached amongst the people. And the more I talk to knowledge seekers, or we see, we hear, it's amazing how many people know about the knowledge, or they use it, or they've been around it, and they take from it what they want. Then it's so frequent. And when you talk, people start telling you how much they know. They know the Keshe Foundation. They know the being that we were on the walking path last week, a few days ago, late night. And we were talking with friends, and the guy came shaking, literally was shaking more or less. And he says, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Are you Mr. Keshe?" I said, "I don't have a peace midnight in the middle of nowhere talking with friends." And I said, "Why is he shaking?" He said, "I can't stop shaking because I could never imagine I can meet you." And on the street, we are amongst people, and we've grown amongst people. And different type of communication is different ways. This is how Christ managed to cross from Jerusalem to Europe. Because of those days, nobody knew who he is. There was no means of communication to explain how he looked. Only few people in Jerusalem knew him. And now it's not that way. I was talking to Yusuf in Tehran a few days ago, and he says, "You know what happened? They delivered the books. When they came to deliver the books, which was printed, happened to be on the corridor downstairs, and the guy saw the books or whatever. He says, what is this with the Keshe Foundation? How do you know?" He says, "We are the officers of the Keshe." He says, "I know about the Keshe Foundation, but I didn't know you are my neighbors upstairs." People know, and it happens all over. This time, the knowledge cannot be hidden. The governments have tried, the kings have failed, and the kingdoms will go with it because they fail. And many others will go with it. And the change will come. But this time, due mass communication, the knowledge will spread. It's not like before. Every time we give a knowledge, a few groups, cities, or whatever, they spread it, or they use it to create more mayhem. This time, we use it to create peace. The knowledge is the same, and the teacher has not changed for thousands of years. It's the same teacher, just moving from one city to another. And now it's time. We have access to mass media. We teach again, but in much deeper way, much understood way. And this time we'll bring the change. Because we made the facilities for it. We made the communications to be done that this time the whole planet listens. Through the soul, through the understanding of the knowledge. The ancient books you read is what we wrote. Now this time it's called book 1, 2, and 3. But in essence it's the same path. Any other question?
Well, perhaps we should leave it at there. Mr. Keshe, I think you covered pretty much everything here.
Very much.
There is a little piece of news that I'll just put it up briefly here, that in our contest with the Universal Enhancement Spaceship Unit, is coming along nicely. And this is just so
How
people,
far have you moved up to?
I have to tell people about it first. I'm building up to it. This is the Create the Future design contest put on by some major engineering and technical firms. And here's our Universal Body Enhancement Spaceship Unit entry. And it's now up to 105 votes. And if we go over to the number of votes here, we can see that we haven't made it into the top 10 yet, but we are tied for number 14 position. And if we get another 10 to 20 votes, we'll be in the top 10 out of over 500 entries in this contest. So we've rapidly increased from position number 26 right up to position 14 the last couple of days. And now this is just for the popular, what's called the popular vote, which is the public support basically for these devices and things. There's actually a panel of 24 judges which judge each entry in September, and that's separate, and that's what actually counts toward winning the actual contest. But the top 10 leaders in the popular vote, which we see here, will also be promoted, and it'll be as part of the.
So you're asking knowledge seekers to go in there and vote for you.
Yes, basically that's what it comes down to, and there is a how to vote page here up on the left side, and it tells you that there's 3 steps. You have to register, and the registration is you have to fill out all these parts of the registration form. And then once you're registered, they confirm your registration by replying to the email. You confirm it by replying to the email that we send you. And then you log in and vote for your favorite entry. So people can do that. That would be great. I'm just putting a plug in that I think it's great to support the Universal Body Enhancement Spaceship Unit just to get it out there. Like Mr. Kesh was saying, we're in a world now where we have this amazing technology that we can communicate with each other, and we can, interact. And I think it's great that we've activated the knowledge seekers, and that support base is coming through and mobilized, and they're voting on this. And if we can vote it up into the top 10, I think that would be terrific, just as a beginning. If it was number 1, of course, that would be my preference, but I'm kind of greedy that way, I guess. But I think it's this unit deserves to be at the top of this competition, I think. So if we can all help to do that, then I think that'd be terrific. I'll put the
when does the competition finishes?
I think it's as far as I know, it's at the end of this month. So we have another 2 or 3 weeks to vote. So we'll see. The top votes are for, I think they're up in the 200 and 300 votes sort of thing. So we'd have to double and triple the number of votes we have now in order to take that.
You got to plug it in everywhere, but let people decide.
Yeah. Yep. So it's kind of fun in any case, and it's no doubt raising some eyebrows in the medical part of this competition, which is, by the way, sponsored by Zeus. That's the category sponsor for the medical category, which is kind of odd, but anyway. So there you go. I'll put the links in the chats, and people can choose to vote if you wish. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you for today. And hopefully we meet next week. And I think very soon we'll be starting our 9th year of teaching. And we'll see how we go. We hope to develop more. And as we said, hopefully next week we'll be introducing the mask enhancement plasma units and a couple of new systems. and they knew there's a huge shortage of oxygen systems. We try to see how we can get the export license certificates out of Iran that many people have been waiting for, especially a lot of governments, and with their response, especially for Corona. Thank you very much for today, and we hope we meet next week. And as they say, keep safe.
Okay, thank you once again, Mr. Keshe, for another Knowledge Seekers workshop. 393 of them so far. And this has been the Knowledge Seekers workshop for Thursday, August 12th, 2021. Thanks to everybody for attending and for your questions today. And we look forward to being here next week at the same time and place. The universe provides for that. And what else do we have coming up? We have on Tuesday, what is the date on Tuesday? It is Tuesday, August 17th. We have the One Nation, One Planet, One Race for World Peace, which people can attend and listen to members of the Universal Council present their presentation. Probably forgetting a couple things, but that's basically it. Another thing we could mention is the North American Corona Group, which occurs on the weekend as well. There's notices in the usual places for that. Okay, I think that's it. I'll play some ads to go out on here, and thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you next time around.